Hey, it's Moran. Here's your Heartfelt Lift. Today I'm here with.
Hi, I'm Dianne Andree, your burnout prevention specialist.
So today we will be talking about it's not selfish, it's self-care. So what happens when you don't take the time for self-care?
Oh, thank you so much for asking that question, Katie. The reality is, we all need to be taking care of ourselves. And if we don't do it, in the end, your body is going to let you know in one way or another that you're not doing a good job of it, and you'll either end up sick with a cold sore or some other, way that your body is going to say, no, you're not listening to the warning signs I'm giving you. And so I'm going to shut you down in one way or another.
And now this is something that there's a lot of different information online. This idea of what does self-care look like and what exactly are like examples of effective self-care and what does it look like to you and for the people you help?
So self-care is a word that's used a lot, and very often there isn't a lot of definition around it. But self-care, the reality is self-care is different for everybody. So we have to figure out what is it that fills our soul? What is going to fill my bucket so that I can show up in the spaces and places in the way that I want to, being my best self. In today's busy world, we use words like, oh, I'm so busy as a badge of honor, but busy and burnout are not badges of honor. And so the only
Mm.
way to avert those is to actually do something that is going to care for yourself. What you don't hear very often is that stress is good. Stress is an effective defense mechanism. So you can never say, I want to eliminate stress from my life. You can't eliminate stress. You don't want to. That is what kicks in our fight or flight. That is sometimes what can get us so laser focused in a critical situation in order to do our best problem solving. The problem is when you live in a place of chronic stress, and that will take an impact on it'll affect your sleep, which of course, affects so many other things. That gives brain fog, cortisol effects. I could go for hours. But you also will wear down your immune system. So you will start to find that you're getting little sicknesses and eventually it could lead up to a large sickness. So what is it you can do to mitigate your chronic stress? How do you take yourself from being up here when you need to be to a more relaxed level? Now, a lot of times people will say, oh, I'm going to go get a manicure and pedicure. Well, that might be a piece of it, but is that filling your soul? Yes, it's taking time for yourself, and that is critical. And if your listeners don't hear anything else today, one thing I want them to walk away with is if you don't have self-care on your daily plan, just know that you are setting yourself up to be sick, cold sores, something else. Something will happen, right? So it is that critical. Now, the other thing people say is, I don't have time. I counter that with, you're not making time. You're not prioritizing yourself. And, very often we prioritize other people in our life or our work in our life. And so this needs to be a priority, again, so we can show up the way that we want to. So with that manicure and pedicure idea, okay, that could be a piece of it. But again, is it filling my soul or is it just one or two drops in the bucket? And if I
Mhm.
only keep putting in one or two drops, but I keep dumping my bucket to my work, to my family, to my volunteerism, to all the other things I want to do, I'm going to continue to feel empty. And that helps that what that also does is it makes you not be present in your life. You start to get resentful. Again, you may not be sleeping because you're trying to do all the things. You're busy doing the things. And so therefore you're not nurturing yourself. The other thing I'll say is when people talk about the concept of time and self-care is it doesn't have to be an hour long. Like I do want people to take the time to do a 30, 45-minute walk. But a couple of things about that. One is it doesn't have to be 30 to 45 minutes in one stint. It might be that I have to go to the next building for work. So I'm going to walk, but instead of walking directly there, I'm going to walk around the parking lot and go there and add in a few extra steps, some
Mm.
time, a little mental break for myself. And so, or I might choose to do 10 or 15 minutes on my lunch hour and then come back and eat quietly, mindfully for 10 or 15 minutes. So, but I can put it in little pieces. For myself, I'm really working hard to try to develop a meditative practice. You can call it mindfulness, meditative, contemplative, whatever you want to call it, right? There, those words have become a little synonymous. But I know that I don't always have 20 or 30 minutes. And what I've really learned is that if you just take 30 seconds, I call it a 30-second reset. If you just sit for 30 seconds, calm yourself, put your feet on the ground, breathe, and be conscious of that breath, not checking your phone, just being quiet for 30 seconds. The way that it can lift you up mentally, like for me, that fills my bucket. Sometimes it's between calls, Zoom calls, I will just step outside and I'll just look, I'll smell, I'll listen, I'll feel the sun on my skin, just those, it doesn't have to be a long time, but that is what can really fill your soul. And that's what we need to do. Otherwise, we're going to end up resentful, empty, tired, and possibly sick.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing this up, and also the idea of boundaries. So what exactly would you say to someone who says they don't have time, but they keep putting in things for other people and other people's self-care into their schedule without having proper boundaries for actually making time to do their own self-care?
Right, because I mean, boundaries are self-care just in and
Hmm.
of itself. And
Mm,
one of the things I would say is, we only have so many hours in a day, right?
mm,
So what is it that's going to make you feel better? And you really need to look at, why are you saying yes to everything? Again, as a
mm,
society, we have really gotten caught up in this whole busy is a badge of, oh, I'm so busy. I'm just so busy. I almost want to say, what are you running from? Right?
mm,
Why, we have to
mm,
be okay to be alone, because at some point in life, whether it's moments or periods of time, you will be alone. And so you have to become comfortable with that. And I think it's getting harder and harder in our society with all of the input we have, the 15-second reels and the oh, I'm just going to quick scroll 30 minutes later,
mhm,
right? So and I am not against technology. I think technology is great. I use my own website to have resources for people. So, I think that we have to look at either our use of technology, we have to look at why we're saying yes to something. Is it filling some kind of need, or is it because we're trying to make ourselves busy? And
mhm,
because all we know is busy. Life is really fast. And I say that a lot when people are like, oh, kids today. And, I just, retired from education. And my kids today aren't any different, right? The
mhm,
world that we live in is
mhm.
different. The world they grew up in is different. And it's just faster paced. So we have to make a very conscious effort to slow ourselves down. And then you have to say, what's important to me? What do I value? And if what you're volunteering to do or engage in is in alignment with your values, then do it, because that could feed you. But if it's not in any way, shape, or form, you have to have enough self-respect to say no to that, because it will drain your energy.
What is the alternative to being busy?
Being quiet.
Mm,
And a lot of us aren't good at being quiet. I, for years, was not good at being quiet. And then I got sick. So, people who say, why did you pick out burnout, as a prevention, I said, well, you talk about what you know. And
mm,
so the reality is, I almost burned out on my career twice early on. And so I had to learn to be quiet. And it's not bad, it's not scary, it's just a different way. Now, I do feel fortunate. I'm a kid of the 80s, proud kid of the 80s, and our life was a little bit slower. Now, for me, I've had to learn different forms of self-care, because the easiest one for me, the one, if I could do one thing every day for myself, it would be to float in the ocean.
mm,
I grew up near the water. The water is my heartbeat. I don't have that luxury. Unfortunately, I'm 5 hours landlocked. Never thought I'd be there. But so what I do is when I go to the beach, I make short recordings. So I can take, and I try to be present while I'm doing it and during that time so I could take myself back there. I mean, I've gotten to a point where I've worked and I've worked at it. It's not, doesn't just come easy, but I can put myself in again, 30 seconds to a minute. I can be back at the beach. I can smell it. I can hear it. I can feel the sand between my toes. I can feel cool water, rocks, like smooth rocks under my feet, cool water coming over my toes. Like, I mean, but you have to be present to do that. And so, again, but I use technology to capture it. I have
Mhm.
several, and now that's like my thing. That's what I bring back from trips, is those recordings. So I could go back to that place. And so, I say give yourself the time and the gift of self-care. And again, it doesn't have to take a lot of time. It just has to be purposeful and intentional and consistent.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I wish you all well.